Today, it's all about the baby backs. I think I'm going to really try to get into these baby backs and let you know exactly what they are and how they differ from a spare rib, because they're definitely different. And so if you know more about it, I think you'll be a better cook when it comes to it. Baby backs don't take quite as long to cook as the spare ribs do. If you've ever had a center cut boneless pork chop, that sits directly right here on this rib. So, and that's evident. That's evident when you look at the loin meat, this white pork meat that you find on the top part of this rib. So this comes off of the spine, and it's a little bit shorter as far as the length of the bones, and like I said, it has a lot more white meat content in it, and I believe less fat striations going through it. So it doesn't take as long to cook a baby back. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go through with our rib prep. And it's pretty standard rib prep. You know, if you've seen my spare rib video, you've seen this before. I'm going to remove some of this unneeded fat from the top of the rib because it's just in the way. And then we'll wind up just bringing in my go-to rub. I make my own rub for these ribs. And so I'll bring some of that into it. You can use whatever rub works for you. I would say this, I tend to kind of stay away when it comes to rib cooking from rubs that have a high sugar content. It goes great with pork, but the problem is the amount of time you got to cook this stuff to get the texture, the tenderness that you want. That sugar will have a tendency to blacken, so you get a lot of blackness on your ribs. And even without the sugar, you can get that. We're going to try to make these ones pretty today. Sometimes I don't really worry too much about the presentation. If it's good to eat, then that's what I'm mainly after. So let's go ahead and remove this membrane. There we go. Okay, so I'm not going to rub anything on here to help the rub stick, because I'm going to kind of dry and marinate it, and there's enough salt in this rub that it's going to pull the moisture that I need out of the meat, and that'll help hydrate the rubs and help it stick. And I'm not going to be real heavy on the back side of this with the rub. And now we'll get the front side of it, or top side. And I'm just going to put a fair amount on there. Alright, that looks good. Just kind of pat it in to help it stick, and we'll get this other one done, and then we're in wait mode. If you've ever had a pork chop from the loin, or a loin chop on your plate, and you look down at it, you can see where the actual center cut loin chop is at within that pork chop. And if you look at it, laying right along there with it is that baby back rib. And so when you look at it from this perspective, maybe then you'll really understand what the baby back rib rack is, where it comes from on the pig. And you know, because of that, and because of the type of meat that's right there, it's a real popular one for an open grill, like a Santa Maria style cook as well, because the whiter meat on the pork chop doesn't require that long cook to get tender. You can completely just fire a pork chop like you do a steak, you know, and it's still going to be tender and it's still going to be good. So they're popular for that. So we're going to go ahead and let this rest. We'll go fire the pit up here in a couple hours, and we'll get them on, and I'll show you what we do on that to make it perfect. These ribs are going to go into the Weber Smoky Mountain cooker, and if you're not familiar with the Smoky Mountain cooker, it has two grates, an upper and a lower grate, and just below the lower grate is a very large water pan, and below the water pan is where our charcoal and our wood's burning. So when I cook ribs, I always recommend that you have a water pan in your pit. If you don't have a pit like this that actually has a water pan in it, then I recommend you get maybe a cooking tin or something and find a place within your pit that you can put a cooking tin and add some water into that. You really need the humidity when you're cooking racks of ribs to keep the outside from getting too dry. So we want a lot of moisture and a lot of humidity when we're doing this. Like I said, we're going to run these at about 250 degrees. I expect that they're going to probably take in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 3 hours to cook to where I want them. So there they are. We're going to go ahead and get the lid on there and just let it ride. And we'll check on these again in about an hour and see how they look. Got the vent set, and she's doing 250 degrees right where we wanted to put it, so we'll just let it ride like this and render out all that fat and stuff. We ought to have some pretty good ribs here. We're just over an hour now, and it looks like this stuff's tightening up a little bit. It's definitely not near tender yet, so we got a little ways to go with that. We're going to keep letting it ride. I'm looking for the bones to kind of protrude a little bit more out the sides, but you can see where it's kind of tightening up and the meat's rising. It tells you you've got some tight fibers in there, and so we'll just keep riding at 250. It's looking just like it should look. They're probably going to be a little darker than what I'm expecting them to be, but that's okay. They're kind of taste phenomenal. We are right at the 2.5 hour mark at this point, and these baby backs are cooked all the way through the bone. They're just not to that tenderness that I'm looking for. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go ahead and baste these things with some cooking oil, and this cooking oil is going to eliminate my need to wrap these ribs to get them to the tenderness level that I want. It's going to act as a heat conductor, so it's going to pick up heat and project it into the meat and help the meat hold a little more heat inside. It's also going to trap the moisture in, which is going to help it to tenderize. And so in lieu of wrapping, we're going to do it this way instead. It's really a good method, especially if you're doing like a larger piece of meat that you're trying to increase the cook time, or reduce the cook time. I'm sorry. If you do this, it'll help it to get cooked faster. We're at 3 hours and 10 minutes. I'm just peeking in on them real quick here, and I can see they look really good. They look very moist, but I can already tell that they're not to the level of tenderness I'm looking for, because the rib bones are just, I don't see enough of them exposed. I need to see that meat pull back a little bit more, so we're going to cover them back up, keep riding, and we'll see where it takes us. We're at 3 hours and 40 minutes, and I'm just finishing up glazing these things with my barbecue sauce. Those bones are looking exactly like I want them to look now. They're protruding out there just perfectly. The meat's pulled back. I know they're tender by looking at them. So I'm just going to give them another 15 minutes here in the pit to let this sauce set up, and then I think we're ready to pull them off. Time to pull them off. Take a look how flexible these things are. These are perfectly cooked ribs. Payoff time. So I'm going to break this rack open and show you how easily it comes apart. Notice how the meat still hangs onto the bone, but it's super tender and super moist, so it's really, really good. You can see that if you look real close as I pull this meat out, it lets go of the bone easily, but it doesn't just fall off. You don't ever want it just falling off. In fact, if you take a real close look at the bones here, as I expose them, you see how wet that bone is? You don't want to see a dry bone on your rib rack, because then you've kind of overdone it, and that would just be a shame. So there you have it. We've made the perfect baby back ribs. So you need to go out and get your rack, go outside and cook them dudes up. You know how it's done now. When you get done, if you got something outstanding, send me pictures of it. I'd love to see it. So that concludes this video. I'll give you a close-up of the product, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can see more upcoming videos.